All I do is complain about. I got 3 bad habits. An addict when it comes to it. At the casino, I'm always throwing the fit. See, I like mean women that want my Facebook code. I guess my lifestyle is just getting too old. She might say I'm cold, and I just don't care. I'm a selfish motherfucker with the gel in his hair. So I take it on the booze with nothing to lose. Got me singing the blues, not the one to choose. Still I rap at him like Eve tapped at him. Such a bad apple, got game like Madden. So I think it's fun to lose at Wolf Run. So I skip all my sheens, go and play 21. Now it's on blackjack to get my money back. So my chick doesn't hate, try to double my stack. Still I go hard, and they know me at the bar. Even if I try to hard, they all know my card. Damn. I got 3 bad habits.
3 bad habits.
I'm a gambling addict. I can't hold a relationship.
No.
All I do is complain about it. I got 3 bad habits. I'm a gambling addict. I can't hold a relationship.
No.
All I do is complain about how I got 3 bad habits, as a matter of fact. The one of them's when the girl is trying to sing from my sack. Don't get attached to them, they love it when I rap to them. Talking about Nate is the name.
Hey, welcome to the B&B Indigenous Podcast. Once again, thank you for joining us tonight. This is our brand new time and day, Mondays at 7 p.m. Of course, I'm your Indigenous brother from another mother, Patchett Little Wolf Brooks, always with my partner in crime, Rockin' Ron. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing damn fine, sir. Out here in Detroit, Michigan, of all places. I decided to join you in the Eastern time zone, man. So how's things been going over in Secaucus today?
It's finally warming up. I'm happy to see it warm. I went outside with a short sleeve shirt, so I was happy as heck.
It was 57 degrees here today. I'm like, wait a minute. Now, normally when I drive commercial trucks across the country, it's like negative 60 over here. You know what I'm saying? Anywhere in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, anywhere across Saskatchewan, Manitoba, you name it. It's all cold, man. Cold-blooded. Midwest, you're cold-blooded.
We have
Welcome to the B&B Indigenous Podcast, everybody. We're glad to have you. Tonight is going to be an amazing episode. We've got a wonderful guest joining us in studio tonight. You guys are going to want to tune in. Make sure and share this. Our new time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday nights. So we want you guys to join us afternoon, evening, so we get more people to be able to pay attention, tune in, take a look at the content we're putting out there. Patrick and I have been working our butts off all week, our personal gigs, as well as putting this show together. And the guests we got tonight, they're going to knock your socks off, man. Maybe your moccasins too first. You know what I'm saying? But we're going to start out right now. Patrick's got some news, and I'm going to lead right up behind him. As soon as he's ready to rock and roll, that's where we're going to go, and then we're going to get right to it with our special guest. So here we go.
All right,
Patrick.
first thing on the docket is Mr. Gilbert Ortega. If you haven't been paying attention to Facebook or Native News, Mr. Ortega is the gentleman that was outside of the Scottsdale gallery. He owns a gallery there in Scottsdale, Arizona, selling Native American goods. And during a live taping of ESPN, there was a bunch of dancers, and also my buddy Blackbird was out there, and this guy came out and just started flinging racist comments at the dancers, just a belligerent crap. Luckily for me, Cody Blackbird, he recorded it all, he posted it all, and it went viral. At this point, Mr. Ortega has been arrested and charged as a misdemeanor, but most of the dancers are going after him. They'll go after a hate crime, which I think what he was doing and all the crap he was saying, it was my personal opinion, it should be a hate crime. I'm hoping those go through and we can push charges for a hate crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it makes no sense, bro. It makes no sense. You're going to sell native goods and then talk that way to native people. And he's married into the native family, the Dene family. He's married in his family is Dene. And for him to talk that way to other natives, it just is, you know.
It's deplorable, and it just goes to show that you obviously weren't raised with any consideration or respect for other human beings. It doesn't matter where you come from. We should all be able to carry ourselves in a way that has respect, especially when you're a guest on native lands. No matter where you're at, folks, if you want to know, you're a guest on native lands. It's probably a good idea to look up the tribes in your area. You know, Washington's federally recognized 29 tribes. In Oregon, it's 9. And in California, I believe it's 177. So it's good to know, you know, and that's just the West Coast. In Glendale, Arizona, protesters demanded the National Football League abolish race-based mascots and imagery, taking their disapproval to the State Farm Stadium, where Super Bowl 57 was played on Sunday. The Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs played at the NFL's largest stage in front of a sold-out crowd of 64,300 live spectators and millions of television viewers around the world. The protest was organized to challenge Kansas City to abandon its team name and mascot, the Chiefs, as well as the organization's fan-driven tomahawk chop. As Indigenous people, we will not be mocked, said Amanda Blackhorse, one of the organizers for the Arizona to Rally Against Native Mascots demonstration on Sunday. Our culture is not for sale, and we must end cultural appropriation. A group of approximately 100 people marched through the Westgate Entertainment District to one of the entrances to State Farm Stadium. "Stop the chop! Change the name!" shouted a crowd of largely Indigenous participants. "We're not caricatures. We are not stereotypes. We are people," protesters shouted to the crowd as they headed to the Super Bowl. Bystanders were seen mocking protesters by mimicking the tomahawk chop and dancing in the street, laughing at the group of largely Indigenous women who attended the protest. In 2020, the Chiefs banned fans from donning headdresses, war paint, and clothing at Arrowhead Stadium. Those rules apparently were not in effect at the Super Bowl, as a Chiefs fan was seen walking through the crowd holding a replica of a Northern Plains tribe's headdress. Using Native American mascots and imagery has been found to be harmful to Native people, according to the American Psychological Society. Native News reached out on Saturday to the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs for comment on the rules for fans wearing headdresses or war paint at the Super Bowl game, but did not hear back from either. If you'd like to read this story and more, you can always check them out on nativenewsonline.net. And go throwing it back to my brother, Patrick.
I have a fun one here. I'm a nerd and I love sci-fi, always have. And there's something I've always dreamed of having as an Indigenous Comic-Con. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have an Indigenous Comic-Con right there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This year it's going to be on March 10th at the 1002 Park Avenue, Southwest Albuquerque, New Mexico is where it's going to be held. For all Native people that love sci-fi, I would love indigenous things. If you look at Facebook regularly, you see where they indigenize everything. We have claimed baby. Yeah. We've claimed Baby Yoda. We have claimed Chewbacca. So This is a place you can come, the only place you can come and actually show your indigenous spirit, your tribal identity within the characters that you grew up with. Much like me, I grew up with Red Wolf, the very first Marvel Native American comic book character, one of my first heroes growing up as a kid, and be able to go and share your love for sci-fi. Like I said, it's going to be on March 10th. If you want some more information about it, you can go right to their Facebook page. It's called Indigenous Pop X or Indigenous Comic-Con right on Facebook. They have all the updates. They have some great guests coming out this year from some great shows that are going to be doing some signings. I'm super excited. I'm going to try to make my way to the Indigenous Comic-Con myself. I would love to show up and even do a live broadcast for our B&B Indigenous Podcast from the Indigenous Comic-Con.
Oh man, you know what? I'd be showing up. I mean, I'm probably gonna get some red tint in my hair. You know what I mean? And then like the homie, he does like the best like war paint. You know what I'm saying, for powwows. But I want to do some sort of an offshoot of that. You know what I mean? What would be my superhero? It would probably be like control of the elements somehow. Like, you know what I'm saying? You have to be like, are you feeling okay? You look like you're congested and somebody's trying to talk to you, or, you know, you're mad that you got pulled over by the police. So you're kind of lovingly choking him a little bit and he's unaware that you're a superhero, you know, or you have superpowers. If you're choking somebody, you're probably not a superhero.
Well, I'm 5'3". I guess my superpower is to be the gorilla.
That's what I'm saying.
That way I can get on all the rides at Disney World.
Dude. And you could, like, you could go with the name Redwood. You know what I mean? That's he's the tallest short man ever.
All right, what do you got for us, Ron?
Folks, on the 10-year anniversary of Nooksack human rights saga, mass housing evictions proceed unabated. Today marks year 10 of a campaign to purge over 300 Nooksack members and take their homes. Evictions proceed despite the United Nations and United States each calling for a halt. This story was originally published on the 12th, if you guys are not clear, in Deming, Washington. Despite calls from the United Nations and 2 United States agencies for an eviction halt at Nooksack, tribal politicians are proceeding to eject 9 households from their homes this winter. Nearly 30 Nooksack family members are slated to be ejected from federally subsidized state-regulated homes in northern Washington state this month. This actually last month. So one family has already been ordered to vacate their home of 11 years, and that was as of January 3rd of this year. The eviction imbroglio unfolds as the human battle raging at Nooksack reaches its 10th year today. 3 other households await tribal court rulings and have been denied any right to legal counsel by Nooksack authorities. The families are representing themselves pro se. As National Public Radio reports, Billy Rabang, age 71, recently explained to a tribal court judge, the lack of legal representation has stunted us. We can't. We don't understand what we're supposed to be doing. Rabang and her husband, Francisco Rabang, age 81, have participated in the Nooksack rent-to-own program for the last 15 years. Nooksack has barred the lawyer who has represented them and several of the other families for the last 10 years, Gabe Galanda, from advocating for them in tribal administrative or judicial evictions hearings. Each of the 9 homes in dispute were privately developed at Nooksack as part of the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC, home buyership program administered by the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, otherwise known as the WSHFC. Starting in 2005, the WSHFC awarded the lucrative federal income tax offsets to developers of 3 low-income housing projects at Nooksack. If you'd like to know more about the story, you can always log into lastrealindians.com and check them out directly. I can tell you Matt Remley and other authors for Last Real Indians really go in depth about stories that affect our Native communities, most Native social justice issues across the country. Thanks to Native News Online as well as Last Real Indians. And we're going to get right into it right here, right now, folks. We got this guest. He's coming in here, one of the most amazing writers, developers, producers, award-winning personalities behind the camera. I can tell you what, he's got films right now that are on and available at Amazon Prime, if I'm not mistaken. So we're just going to get right to it. Am I right?
Hey, man, I know this guy as a big brother. If you're here on the East Coast, you know Ginew, because that man makes his rounds. He's been singing and dancing his entire life. And we know him as a singer. You know, a lot of people don't know him out here, but he's one of the greatest singers out here on the East Coast with an amazing drum. My brothers, the young blood singers here on the East Coast. Ginew has done so much stuff for the community. He's always speaking out, always showing up. And one of those guys, I always say he's a ladder Indian. You know, that means he builds a way for next natives to come up. You know, we have the crabs in the bucket Indians, and then we have the ladder Indians. We have those ladder Indians that build up a way for other natives to climb. Ginew is definitely one of those ladder natives. I got a chance to see his debut of Looking Glass. I was, me and my wife, before she had passed, my wife was an actress and she loved Ginew, and we got invited to go see Looking Glass at his premiere at one of his when they were having a festival, and it was a fantastic show. It's a fantastic short film. It is on Amazon Prime right now. It's Looking Glass, as well as his new release, his feature film, The Dim, and his short film, Mirror Man's going to be coming here shortly, as well as The Dim. We'll make sure you tune in here today. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce my man, the one and only Mr. Ginew. Oh-ho!
Yeah. Coming to us live from his manse on Long Island.
Well, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that a lot.
And, truth is truth, man.
It's not too often where we encourage each other and recognize that, and as trying to be humble, you just do things from the love of your heart and the guidance of your spirit, sometimes it feels good to hear it out loud, and it's nice. Thanks, appreciate it, brother.
Heck yeah, man. So tell me real quick, what would you say the length of your career in writing and development of story ideas has been for you, if you don't mind me asking to start right out?
Well, Like you said, most people who know me on the East Coast, I did have a bunch of kids, so being the resi guy I am. So
Yep.
I took a minute off from filmmaking. Probably about 2010, I stopped, and probably about a decade, no, less than that. Um, when my kids got older, I basically said, I'm gonna, fulfill what it is that I want to do for myself now that I have time and resources and stability and all that stuff. And my first story that I wanted to tackle was probably one of the more complicated ones, which is a time travel movie,
Yeah.
which is Looking Glass. And that took 2 years to film because in that time I did also meet my wife. And during that time, we kind of didn't make one whole summer. And over the winter, and then the following summer, we finished up filming that film as well. So it took 2 summers to film.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than the actual first draft of the film. Um, the story, the screenplay, the short script. It is different, lot less of what it is today. So, in speaking about that, I think if you can think about who you are and who you're meant to be, and the things that you're meant to do in life, as you say, that I do a lot of education for Shinnecock children. I do the singing and dancing programs. I've also Unkachug, the neighboring tribe over here. I work with their kids as well. Um, but I think that once I reached a point, um, I think the reason why Looking Glass's story actually changed is because I changed as a person. My perspective changed, and I think that the moral of the story, and it's a line in the film, that all things are meant to be. Whether hardships or good things, as Native people, we always have to realize that the plan is there. We teach beautiful things, and it's so complicated that if you can realize that the Creator, um, even though we have free will as human beings, all things were foreseen in our free will, and all of that math was done ahead of time, kind of like a film itself, where it's already there, and it's our human experience that is going through the film from beginning to end. And
Yeah.
all the lessons that we learn, hopefully a lot of us have good movies to experience, good lives.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it really is in the lessons that you take away from it. So Looking Glass actually transformed a little bit, and it was expanded into what we call the Seven Fires prophecy as the Ojibwe people. Um, the Seven Fires prophecy is something that you can Google, and it originates when the Ojibwe people were along the northeast coast, and there was a mass exodus when a prophet came to us and said that the light skinned race was coming. Some horrible stuff is going to happen. Pick up your sacred way of life and move westward. And it took us, according to our teachings, about 26 generations to be able to make that walk. We established villages and along the way, following the St. Lawrence River, passing Niagara Falls, a lot of us, all the way to the Great Lakes where food grows on water. And when you Google that the entire story will be there. But at the time, and I still think I don't know, we don't know who those prophets were. We just know that it was a spiritual experience where a being came to the people. In its translation, a being came to the people and began speaking these words. And so, in my mind, knowing what I know about the sweat lodge ceremony and that it's actually a time travel device, you know what I mean?
It very much is.
We have spiritual people who can speak to the past and also speak to the future if you know somebody who's strong and powerful enough, And
Yeah.
we try not to disrespect that, and we know that those people are there and they exist, and we hold them in great reverence because of who we are as Indian people. We know that they're special, So given what the prophecy says about today, about all of the bad things that would happen to the non-believers of the prophecy on the East Coast, all of those things had come to fruition. All of the prophecies came to life. The loss of language, the loss of culture, and even some cases, the loss of identity. We know that the forced mixing out of people, and even a lot of my family, they have that thing about the stereotypical Indian. It's pretty rough when you have to explain to people that don't understand, when they look at someone like me who may be stereotypical looking and make the comparisons to your family, and then you have to educate them and tell them the story about why that is. And it becomes a humbling experience for them because they don't realize how horrible that experience was for people of mixed race. You know what I mean? But being Indian people, we don't exclude. We prophesied. Even in this prophecy, it talks about the new people. If you read the texts, that translation was very important because a lot of Ojibwe people up into modern day thought the new people were just the new generations. But if you can look at quite literally how it is that we're transforming as Native people, we are new people. We're transforming into physically new people. Same spirit, but different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that our spiritual people back then saw that. They saw that the people on the East Coast would be the new people, and they'd rise up one day and re-establish and re-embrace the traditional way of life that was systematically stolen away from them. So I included all of those. I tried to include as much of those subject matters in the film as I could, using myself and also my Uncle Johnny, who plays my dad in the film, and about the topics of mixed race, those ideas, and the antagonist and how he uses that against that character, and makes a misguided opinion. And of course, taking those ideas and trying to formulate a story that would create an incident, which in the story is a hate crime, something that's so devastating, which is a loss and a death, where he would devote his time to be able to create a time machine based off of what he knew as a traditional device and how he was raised as a traditional person, to create a time machine to go back and try to save his father, right? But it also becomes a metaphor about colonialism. You can see the direct symbolism in that, right? Where the white antagonist takes away that which we love, our relatives, and makes them an ancestor for whom he himself hears in the story, to be able to guide him on his journey in becoming this person that he's inevitably meant to be in the story, which was the prophet that went back to tell the people that the light-skinned race was coming and to move westward. And so basically, one of the things I try to say is that it's kind of like the John Connor effect, where if he doesn't go back, nothing that we have today would exist for him to be able to make the time machine and go back and continue the loop. You know what I mean? So, that's kind of the gist of the story. But there's a lot of nuances and symbolisms and the shots, the framings, you can go on and on about all the things I tried to put in there that was meaningful to our beliefs, and I think that people who are probably Ojibwe, if they watch it, they can pick up on all of it. And I have family who saw things that I probably didn't even pick up on as the director, trying to put it in there, and just feeling that it's right, and then they told me why I put it in there. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
I mean, I'm not Ojibwe, and I think any native that's of the time, of the culture, and I say that genuinely of the culture can pick up what you're putting down on in that story. I mean, I was sitting there reading it like a book, watching it. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I think I don't think you put it so deep that your average native can't understand it, because you made it really clear on what the message behind it was. I mean, just paying attention to the movie, you'll be like, oh, and as I was sitting there, it's like, oh, did you remember that part? Because that came back, So, absolutely, man. I mean, I love the film. I'm encouraging more people to watch it. Now, I sat my daughter down and we watched it together because she had never seen it. So, yes, I spent that $2.99 at Amazon Prime to make sure we had it on there. You got something else coming up. You have a feature film you've been working on for a while now, right? The Dim?
Yeah, The Dim, yes. And The Dim, I try to make my titles as symbolic as possible. Mirror Man is also a short film that I did, but that's quite literal, because it's more of like a Jason Freddy type of character. Like I tried to make something that was iconic for the film itself, that represented this entire, that encapsulated the entire message of the film himself. Mm-hmm. Right. And just like Looking Glass, there's themes of reflection, and Mirror Man is definitely a symbol for self-reflection to those who see him. You know what I mean? So The Dim, I'm excited to talk about this because this is the first podcast and interview that I'm doing about this film, and I'm excited to have you guys. That was awesome. So The Dim quite literally refers to the human spirit. And I found this really wonderful quote, trying to think of what to put on the poster as, one of those log line things. And if I can just look up my my poster real quick. So I do have a screening at the Southampton Cultural Center on April 8th, if I can do that. I'm actually, whatever state that the film's going to be in April, I'm going to view it for an audience so that we can, the audience can give suggestions and things like that, and, what they liked and what they didn't like. And, if it's, just like any other movie that has advanced screenings for audiences, there's a chance for reshoots, depending on the suggestions and things like that. You know what I mean? If the things that aren't very clear, then we would go ahead and address those kind of things. But if people love it,
I'm waiting for my ticket. I'm waiting for my invite.
So the quote is, "When darkness crawls in, even the brightest light falls dim." And that's Dylan Carasona. He is the star of the film. He is also the character who played Mirror Man in the short film, and he has this running joke that he likes to say during film festivals, that he's the only trained actor in that film and his face is covered. You know what I mean? So basically, I wrote a whole film for him so that he can have his face all over the poster, and even, I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, he's on the poster right there.
You can, you can say it.
So this is a science fiction thriller, and it centers around the characters of Troy and Lisa. And as Native people, especially as Algonquin people, we do have this very unique relationship with balance. The elements of fire, water, masculine, feminine, matriarchal, patriarchal, and how all of these systems play together in a balance to create our ceremonial way of life, right? So in writing this film, I wanted to tackle the subject that is very popular right now, which is toxic masculinity, and delve into two different characters who are raised differently, and how it is that they go about dealing with a certain situation and an interdimensional object, and the gift that gives, and the choices that the characters make. Um, I won't say whether it's good or bad, but I like to say that there is the element of the downfall of toxic masculinity, about how the choices that we make can continue and cascade us into a terrible position that we regret. And as Native people, I think that hopefully when this film is viewed, they can get a very important message from that, and um, also, again, have a moment of self-reflection and be able to know that in any case of doing wrong, there's no good that can come out of it, you know. Um, so I probably won't go into too much more about that because I do want to test screen it and put it in front of audiences first. So if you go to Southampton Cultural Center on Google, the tickets are up. Even for people who don't attend, it is kind of a fundraiser. So you can buy a ticket and not attend. That's fine. You know what I mean? It'll all help with the proceeds to the film and being able to finish it.
Ginew, I want you, after everything's done, I want you to send me that link so I can post it on our Facebook page here for us to start to really support each other.
Okay. I guess I can go into a little bit about the characters. So
I want to know what got you into doing, movie making. Most people just want to be actors. You jumped that role of being an actor, and you was like, you know what? Instead of just being an actor, I'll write and direct it, and I'll tell our story. So what got you into this?
There's a beautiful thing that my dad always used to say before he passed away, regarding the ingenuity of Native American people, our creativity, our the beautiful way that we are. And I think that it's genetically ingrained through the ceremonial processes that we do, because we do have a really tight-knit connection with creating as a means of symbolizing who we are in spirit. I think all of us have that, and in whatever shape or form. And I think that even today, powwows are major outlet for that. You can see that in the innovation of people's outfits, people's the drum groups, the songs. You can see art in every single thing that we do as Native people, right? So
absolutely.
Even see your paintings in the back there. They're beautiful. And I know that Patrick, you do a lot of outfit work. Like there is creativity in our culture.
We Indianize anything. Native people, we can turn anything native.
Yes.
Anything.
Yep. We can even take things like a phone and bead the case or something. You know what I mean? Because it's just in us to want to like enhance something with who we are and what we represent. You know what I mean? So what got me into film? I do enjoy acting. I am a trained actor. I did go to Stony Brook University for theater. You can read my bios. I got honors in theater and high honors in media arts. And I think that all stems from being a powwow kid. One of the things that my parents would do, and I probably true for a lot of kids, is that we grew up doing what we call gigs. We would go to schools, we would do presentations for a little extra money, and so at a young age, I was put in front of my peers. I was put in front of strange kids, and I had to learn the teachings, learn the songs, learn the dances, learn the meanings behind all those things, and become a public speaker. Learn about all that stuff. And I think that my love for performing had me major in theater at Stony Brook, because they didn't have a film department then. I think they do now, and I think they do have a master's of screenwriting, which they didn't have before. Also, there was a period of time where my mom was a single mother. My parents did divorce, which is how I ended up on Long Island. But I got into entertaining myself, especially being an only child after my parents split. I do have siblings, but I'm my mom's only kid. So I did make friends with the television. You know what I mean? in that point, my mom saw that I had an endearment for films. Like I understood what I was watching. And I think my sister got me into like Purple Rain, and that was the first time that I experienced like a film that was
Yeah.
entertaining and had a story, and it was kind of captivating being a little kid because, you know, Prince is a life to be reckoned with. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yes.
You know, he was very, very iconic. You know, living. Well, he's not living anymore, but he's a
Just
legend.
thinking about that movie the other day, driving
You
through
know what I mean?
Minneapolis, St. Paul, brother.
And you know, I rewatch a lot of films that I grew up with because I think that there was a sense of awareness in filmmaking back then that is kind of missing today. And I think that the love of story is kind of lacking over the almighty dollar today in the film.
Yeah. Oh yeah, reboots, remakes, recopies.
But they're empty. They're
Yeah.
shallow. You know, if it's not a superhero film, it's you know, it doesn't really make a lot of money anymore. And it's far and few between that you get an actual film these days that is a coherent story that, you know, sits well with you and you remember. There's a lot of disposable films today.
Yeah.
So I rewatch a lot of older films from the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s for story structure, for things that I know that stood out to be popular, themes and things like that. So I don't know if you noticed in my filmmaking that I do have that type of feel underneath all of, you know, the traditional things that I try to dump onto there. Story structure wise, 3-act structure, that kind of stuff. You know, theme music in the background, you know, people who donate music I put into the films, that kind of thing. So what got me into film was watching like Jim Henson, Freddie and Jason, and things that I knew, you know, because I always taught, you know, as a kid, you always, you know, these movies aren't real, right? It's not real life, right? So you watch them and you're like I feel things from these, and I love that feeling of filmmaking and having them touch me in a way where it resonates in who I am. And I think one of the biggest examples was The Dark Crystal, a Jim Henson film.
Fantastic movie.
Yeah, I mean, it just the subtle things that made you feel like, you know, a lot of this stuff sounds pretty Indian. You know what I mean? And you can kind of relate colonialism in that, you know, prophecy stuff, and, you know, things that you kind of grow up hearing, and that's in a film. You know what I mean? And it kind of blows you away, and then you start researching other films and watching other things and seeing what involves that. You know, even when they started coming out with stuff called Movie Magic, you remember that show back in the day? Before the DVDs came out, they had like the bonus stuff and how, you know, how they make things. And that just blew me away, especially Jurassic Park came out and they had all the behind the scenes stuff of that. And then Terminator 2 and Terminator, like all of these things. And I ended up realizing that I love a lot of films from the same directors. You know what I mean? So then you start researching directors and you start watching all of their films, and you see that they have like this theme going on in their filmmaking and this style about them that is uniquely them. And, you know, so I got into filmmaking when I got into college. You know, I did theater. I learned about, you know, being a part of a team on stage, all the different aspects of modern theater, you know, sound, imaging, all that stuff. There was a minor filmmaking course because there was sometimes films involved in the theater process, you know, things that were projected. So we would have to make clips and things for that. But in doing so, I started thinking of my own ideas and really paying attention to what might be different in my thought process. And that's kind of difficult for a lot of people, is to think of something that's unique. But I like to think a lot of I think that we have as Native people an untapped well
Oh,
of
yes.
ideas and resources, and that we're kind of on this wave of doing the same thing over and over again since the 90s. And like the shows like Reservation Dogs, even though it is very good, you can see how it's still kind of smoke signals, that it's still kind of films that we kind of grew up with, and that it still represents a society that is on reservation, just still the typical things. And I think that's because that it's still kind of palatable to non-Indian people to see us like that. But they do a creative thing and do a lot of modern pop culture things in the show. And they sneak those things in there to like use it as a platform in order to make, bring awareness to our issues. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, God, I'm glad you brought this subject up because we've been talking about this for a while about the redundancy of the repeating of Native suffering.
Yeah.
The
first
stereotypes.
the most move, not really the stereotypes, not the stereotypes. I'm talking about just seeing Native suffer.
Yeah.
The only movie I'd ever seen that had a happy ending for Native people was Ended in the Cupboard. If you think about it, and even that movie had a lot of depression in the middle. They literally brought an elder into the cabinet. He had a heart attack and died on screen in a kids movie.
Yeah.
And they wrapped him up and buried him. I mean, it would be nice to just to see a movie that portrayed a Native person, a Native family, that they had an up, they had a down, and then they learned from that up and ended on a high note where wow, these people went through hell, or they did this and they built as a family, a love story or whatever, and they end up happily ever after. It never seems happily ever. It never seems happily ever after for Native people.
Well, and I want to interject. I mean, because I've been watching films my whole life. There are two stories in particular. Actually, I take that back. There are three that deal with Native social justice issues in a variety of different ways. One of which has absolutely no white characters portrayed in the movie. There are white actors playing Native characters in the movie. That movie happened to be Windwalker. And I remember my parents in the theater when that movie came out. There was a lot of stereotypes, but there was a lot of good acting. There was a lot of characters, I mean, and that I can say watching that movie growing up, like, I mean, I don't know how many kids named their families named their daughter Tashina just because of that movie. So there are influences there. The other one, and I would say this is my absolute favorite because of the character that Graham Greene portrayed, and that would be the movie Clear Cut. Clear Cut scared the living hell out of everybody who watched it that was not a Native person, and even some Natives too.
Yeah, I have to watch that.
Yeah, I mean, but Powwow Highway, I mean, I grew up, that was a staple in practically every Native home I went to. I mean, A. Martinez, I mean, of course, Graham Greene in there again, Gary Farmer, Uncle John Trudell, may he rest in peace, Wes Studi, you name it. I mean, there was all kinds of awesome actors and actresses in that movie that portrayed these characters that I thought, because we were coming out of the quote unquote AIM era, I think it's important that I mean, you can watch that movie right now. I still get the same feeling as I did. I could watch that movie over and over again. It never gets tiring for me. That there were certain little key points in there that I thought were stereotypical, but at the same time, it was still an art form that seems to be missing. Not in every Native film, because there's a lot of people out there that I would say I have not had a chance to watch your most recent, and I've seen excerpts from other, pieces that you've done. But I like people's individual takes on it. That's what I'm looking for in modern films. And I do, when you brought up Reservation Dogs, that was something that I felt like was like, yeah, I still feel a little bit of stereotypes there. But when I seen their story, they were talking about Deer Woman. I was like, oh, good. They're bringing up something that can really empower our women folk. You know what I mean? And that's what I see with, the way that you're explaining the way that you write. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, as I'm moving forward.
I do try to stay away from stereotypes. But there are just some things there are some stereotypes that are true. You know what I mean?
Amen. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I don't mind the stereotypes and reservation dogs, because that's the most realistic. There's not a native person ever on a reservation can't pick out family members in that damn show.
Mm-hmm.
I have picked out aunties. I picked out uncle. Like, oh, I got an auntie just like her. I got an uncle just like her. My mom's just like her, and so on and so forth. You can literally pick out your entire family in that show. So the stereotypes are really, in my personal opinion, aren't the bad thing. I think the point I was making is the tone of native films, that I've seen, or name a native film that does not have a depressing ass, even though it might even end in a good tone, it's a depressing ass film. Dance Me Outside, Smoke Signals. You can name them, and they have just this depressing tone. It would be nice to see a Huxtable's native family, a Huxtable style native family, or a successful native family that has the mother and father that aren't alcoholics, that aren't drug addictions, that raise their kids in a traditional manner. It would be nice to see our people depicted as successful, as successful people that overjumped this stereotypes of alcoholism and drug addiction and beating on our wives and all this negative that we have to deal with. It would be just nice to see us portrayed in a positive form.
Well, to touch on those subjects, I think that one of the things that plagues writers that are novices is that they want to depict those things because they want to make it look native, but a lot of the times there's no reason behind it. You know what I mean? So yeah, you can have a character that drinks, but what is the underlying backstory behind that character that makes him drink? You know what I mean? Like, just showing things for the sake of showing things creates an empty story. And not a lot of people know the entire, like, you watch a film and it resonates good, but the entire, I like to say this word a lot, the math that goes into creating a story block by block. If you have a puzzle, those 1,000-piece puzzles, and you dump it out onto the table, and you know what you want in your head, you know what the picture is because the box is right there, and you see what it is. But the time it takes to take all of the little pieces and put them all together in order, that's what screenwriting is like. It's terrible, and you may have pieces that don't fit. You got to save it for later, so because it'll fit somewhere else. The pieces are there, but a lot of the times people have an incomplete, like, if you have a scenery thing with a castle, but they leave out the bushes or something like that because it's, it's too hard to pick out the green leaves for the green leaves, so you leave it out, so you just have the castle. That's what a lot of modern day writing feels like. And I also do want to actually touch upon your comment. There is a story theme in films called the mythic hero. Now, the mythic hero is dealing with the third act structure, and there is a moment where that person falls. And a lot of, even in romantic comedies, there's always that thing where they break up for a minute and they have to go, sob to themselves, to their friends before they get the realization and come back for the happy ending. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So there's always that depressing inside middle, because it's the easiest to be able to, make the human watcher react. That's
you have to have conflict of some sort.
That's why that's in there. Like, it's just it's bait, because we as human beings we're attracted to all of those horrible things that happen. It's just like watching rubbernecking on the road when there's a car accident. Like, we want to see those things happen, which is it's, what is that called? Torture porn, or like, what is it called? No. Like,
Not snuff.
no, but
Do not check his browser history.
No.
Whatever.
There is that term. It's people who like to watch, I guess even
Tragic
as kids.
stuff.
Yeah, like even like when I was a kid and I was into Hellraiser and Freddy and all them.
Speak on
Like,
Hellraiser, bro.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'd watch those things because it's like, yes, I knew that they weren't real as kids, but it was such a world of fantasy and stuff that you didn't get to see. It's like, what is that saying? Like when you hear an adult that you've never heard curse before curse, and you like look at them and you're like, it just draws you in. What? You know what I mean? So that's basically what happens with, again, I'll say torture porn because what's the big thing now, even too, with like murder mysteries and those documentaries?
Yeah.
God, man.
So how popular that became, because it's just what people are attracted to. So that's what you continue to see.
It's Robert Stack's voice, bro, on Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Waking up in the middle of the night and hearing his voice and then watching it for the entire 40 minutes because it's scaring the shit out of you. I don't know if you can cuss. Right. I apologize.
No, you're all right.
You're fine. You're absolutely fine.
So for example, in The Dim, the male character, he does drink, he does smoke weed, but you see why he does, and you see the reasons why he escapes. It's not just showing for the sake of showing. You know what I mean? You see the little things in place beforehand, so that especially as dudes, if we've ever been, or maybe not even dude, just human beings in general, who've ever been in a situation where they just felt turmoil and they just wanted to go sit by themselves and have a drink or something. That's basically how I wrote that character. So if he's drinking, it's because he's in his place of safety and turmoil to be able to do that. So I think that especially guys, if you watch it, older fellas, when you watch it, you'll be like, I totally did that before, and I understand this dude. You know what I mean? So like, we all, even if it may not be drinking, it might be going to get, eating a whole pie of pizza. You know what I mean? Eating a whole tub of ice cream.
Yeah.
That's it. Like you were before we started the podcast. And you were just stoned down, be like, man, I didn't eat today. I was so hungry. You know what I mean? But whatever our vice is, we escape to those things. But you want to show the reasons why, and why that escapism subject is particular to that character. So basically, just to reiterate, that kind of stuff attracts people and it's baity, but overusing it is a thing.
Yeah.
And cliche is a thing. So if you're going to write something stereotypical, you really have to, because an audience is not stupid. You know what I mean? They will sniff out. I think Jordan Peele said that too. Like, especially like having a black audience and writing a black film, like it's so easy to have your own people look at what it is that you made and be like, that's not right. That's not at all what we would do or how we would say it. You know what I mean? Because we know our own. So you can tell dishonesty in our own filmmaking as natives. You know what I mean?
Well, and I'm completely on the same level that you are on. When I look at a character, it's not necessarily just the stereotypes. I mean, sometimes it's refreshing to see your own people. That's why we watch native cinema.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I can say, especially when it comes to cultural appropriation or social justice issues in the native community, I feel like a lot of our kids' attention is taken away by other more popular forms of media. That's why you see, I mean, for instance, the gang epidemic that is all over Turtle Island. Every reservation you go to, you're going to find a gang element embedded somewhere in that community that has a lot of negative effects on our kids. That's why I think strong male role models in film and television for our young men and young women. Same thing. Strong young women lead roles that are taking and putting out this face that show our kids what an ass kicker looks like in the Native community, that isn't associated with a gang, that has a, broad shoulder, stand up mentality, that goes out there and dances at powwows, or maybe is the arena director or something cool like that, that we can key our kids back into those places that we want them to be and get them away from that negativisms. And I'm sure you probably remember this, Ginew and Patrick, in the 90s, how many hardcore Mexican gangbanger stories or black gangster stories were out there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I watched Boys in the Hood, I watched Colors, I watched Mi Vida Loca and American Me, and I swear to God, I thought I was Mexican for like 3 straight years. I mean, finger comb, 3 flowers, khakis, you know what I'm saying? 7, 8-point creases in my t-shirts, wearing freaking Cortez, thinking I was the hardest dude ever. Like, come on, dog, that's not you. But that's what I'm saying. These things have an influence on our kids. And that's when you're doing projects, like you said, when you're talking about time travel in those sacred places and bringing that back, that's what I'm looking for. So I can say I'm really thankful for people that are putting those stories out there like that, I mean, what's your take?
Well, what I find is that the stories that I'm telling, I think that they've only got into if you've seen the posters on my social media, there's upwards of 20, 30 laurels, and the laurels, if people who don't know, are the little emblems that you get to put on your poster when you've either been officially selected or won an award. So if you can think of Mirror Man, it has maybe 29 laurels on it right now, and 4 of them are from Native film festivals, but the rest are all non-Native. And I've come to notice this, that that non-Native people, for some reason, are resonating with my stories a lot more than Native people, and I don't know what that is or why that is. Maybe it's just Native Hollywood, I don't know, is still kind of geared towards the typical, and they have no idea where to place me. You know what I mean? So much so that even like the non-Native horror and science fiction film festivals, I've seen them literally make up an award to give us, because they're like, we love it, we want to acknowledge it, but yes, we don't know where to put it. You know what I mean?
Where does it fit? Yeah.
They don't know
like
where
Northern
it fits.
Cree
So...
at the Grammys, they don't know how to mix them down. You guys are so dynamic, man.
So you're gonna say something, Patrick? Sorry.
I wanted to answer your question. You said natives. You it resonates with more non-natives than natives, and I like to give just as being an actor, being married to an actress, I got drugged to every screening that was available and every background. Now, I'm not complaining, Emily. I'm not complaining. I enjoyed it, but as a guy on the outside looking at these films, as a native person coming from the films, a lot of it I think comes from is I've seen it. I've lived this life. I've lived it. I think the native films that do better, what I personally like, are films in places I'm not used to seeing natives.
Yeah.
Places I'm like, oh, like for instance, I used to watch that cop show just because it had Adam Beach in it. It was nice to see. It was nice to see a native cop. I know that sounds weird, and it was nice to see someone working in New York in normal society and regular life, off the res, still practices.
Who he is.
That's the point I was making about the movies. I have issues with a lot of native films. It's like, show me an everyday life. Show me just a native working 9 to 5 at a regular job and a story behind it. And a love story. Let's do a love story, a regular native love story has climax in it, but only, when I was growing up, I used to say, man, I'd love to see Friends, but I'd love to see a native Friends. I loved Friends. I used to love Friends. Yeah. Well, imagine a native Friends.
Actually, there's a good story for you, especially in New York. I think a good way to do that would be involving the native students of Columbia University, because there's a lot of
Oh
natives
yeah.
that go there. And I think that using that as a backdrop, so there's a story idea for you. That's how I come up. It's basically literally, you just witnessed how I come up with a story. Like I
Yeah.
hear something and then my mind goes somewhere and it's like, oh, like I've
It-
experienced that before, where Columbia University has a high native population, and it
That's
would be,
right.
and in New York, having that setting to make a story like that, if you can put a story into that situation, I think we'd watch it.
This
That's
is
what I
what we were
love.
saying. We were
Yes.
saying, bro, the reason why they don't do a Naked and Afraid with natives in it is because we would
Because we
take
wouldn't
that
be
shit
afraid.
over. Okay, it would be over. The season ended in the first 4 hours of filming
That's it. That's
Because
it.
there'd be no turmoil.
Yeah. As
yeah,
long as there's no one, as long as no one whistles in the woods, we're good to go.
Yeah.
yeah.
Now,
Well,
somebody,
native hunting
somebody, some,
shows.
yeah. As soon as they whistle, you'll see them natives disappear real fast. Like, we're
Native
good.
hunting shows, native fishing shows, native gathering shows. See, I think about things that are culturally relevant, but also
Hmm.
something that supports the protection of those places. See, we're protecting our spirit. We're protecting ceremonies.
See,
And
Hmm.
that's how I see it.
yeah,
Anyhow,
that's a
when you
that's
write
a
those
great idea.
stories like
Yeah.
you're writing, Ginew, I mean, I would love to be able to reach out to other artists and have you guys all on a panel come together and make the
Hmm.
strongest native presence you could ever make. I mean, because I've heard, people
One
say
day,
it's
yeah.
really it's difficult to work and navigate the toxic culture in Hollywood, for instance. Even New
Hmm.
York has that culture somewhere.
Yeah.
My brother is actually watching our program right now. They worked at the Silent Film Festival, which was amazing. They did a project called Missing Indigenous. We've talked about this before, but just the idea that native characters are showing up like this, native soundtrack, native Foley artists, native lighting specialists, you name it,
Hmm.
and people who are really good with special effects. I think there was one film, as a matter of fact, even though, like I said, there are characters that are portrayed in this movie that I do not have any respect for because of current native social justice issues regarding our women folk, but that was Dreamkeepers. That
Hmm.
story, that story was right on the money. I mean, and it went through the gamut, man.
Yeah.
It tackled race relations with adopted white people in our tribes. I'm big on talking about Cynthia Ann Parker because you'll hear a lot of racism towards white folks in Native communities. It's like, bro, you 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 should probably elevate your mind a little bit, especially when it comes to stuff like that. But that's what I mean. Dreamkeepers did that, and the special effects, and the fact that Gary and late Uncle John were standing side by side as Spilly Eye, or the Coyote and Spider. You know what I mean? And trying
Yeah.
to steal. Homeboy's trying to steal my wife, bro. She's cooking for him.
My daughter just sent me a text. She corrected me. She said, "Dad, Ending the Cupboard's not the only movie with a great happy ending for natives." She reminded me of Crooked Arrows, because Crooked Arrows was also, it had a lot of my cousins in it, of the Haudenosaunee people, of us playing lacrosse, and it told the
Yeah.
story of lacrosse, and that had a great ending of them winning the championship, and everybody was happy. She was like, that was very weird to see a native film that didn't really have, like, I mean, you had conflict in the film. You had
Mhm.
conflict of them. The casino was going, their land was getting sold where they played lacrosse and they were selling off. They had conflict, but it overcome conflict, and at the end, you seen this championship lacrosse team passing on their traditions to the next generations. And I was like, oh, she's absolutely right. She kind of checked me. My daughter kind of checked me there.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought about something that maybe like filmmakers could do, because I mean, I've seen documentaries on Billy Mills and Jim Thorpe and other Native artists
Hmm.
and actors and actresses. My
Yeah.
Auntie Allison, for instance, was the greatest stunt woman in the world for like 20 straight years. Allison Logsdon, may she rest in paradise. She was one that was in Las Vegas doing shows with a lot of the wildlife down there. She had a lot of non-natives that really supported her. Matter of fact, she took a face dive off the top of the Columbia Tower in downtown Seattle. That's a 1,000-foot tall building, and she 3, 2, 1, fly, and boom, she jumped off. I remember my dad, how proud of her he was. That's my auntie. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's so awesome. To be, like I said, to encourage the youth to doing more things like that are geared toward our people. And like the bro said, you know, there's
Yeah.
there's some shows that just aren't for Indians, you know, Fabian chasing bear, finding Bigfoot, you know what I mean? But there are some I think that would be really awesome that we could bring. And that's why I'm saying it's, you know, to me, it's refreshing to see people that are writing stories in the vein that you do.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, gosh darn it. I always space his name off, and I do this all the time. The writer of Pulp Fiction. Why am I spacing his name off?
Quentin Tarantino.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Ginew. But, you know, seeing people that are out there that are writing stories that have some cultural relevance to them, like the Dawn of the Dead, or what was it? Was it Dawn of the Dead? Or no, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
You know, talking about
Totally
the ancient
different movies.
Mayan ruins and the fact that, you
Yeah.
know, you guys should probably stay away from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would love to see that. You want to talk about native?
Yeah.
What's always Will Sampson and Poltergeist 2?
Well,
we
that
need
was,
more like that.
yeah,
that
I
was
do that.
so cool back in the day. Like to be able to see
Absolutely. Hell yeah, it was, man. When I first started writing, starting to write my own film, as you know, as I started writing my own film, there was an idea I had a while back. It was, imagine if we had an ER, but set at a tribal hospital.
that. Mm-hmm. Actually, my Uncle Johnny has a script about that.
I would watch that all day. I mean,
I don't want to
they-
give away. I don't want to give away the plot, but there's
Yeah.
there's a native doctor, and it's,
But
it's a pretty cool
but
idea.
but it would be a series just like ER.
Yeah.
It'd be a series just like ER, but it'd be set in a tribal hospital. So, and if any native person on here has ever been to a tribal hospital, it is a show all by itself. They could just put
Well,
they could just put video cameras up in there and put it live, and you'd watch.
I can tell the story that it is a native who starts working at a non-native hospital, and that's where like the conflict is, where you can see the differences in and the conflict where they don't quite understand what he's doing and why he's so successful in doing it, and he has to explain to them in the Indian way why he's actually healing people, you know, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely,
That's
hell yeah.
pretty much how his story goes, and it's already written, and I should make him dust it off, because it's one of those
Dude.
things where like
Yeah.
he doesn't get anybody to do it, and then all of a sudden, you know, it'll just like my film Iron Shirt. You remember that trailer with
Yeah.
the native boy superhero? Like
Yep.
that's sitting collecting dust now, because I'm moving on to different things.
Oh,
You cannot stop until you know, it's, yes, you have it here, but you got to keep going. You know what I mean? You cannot stop, or else you'll find yourself in a rut. Like, okay, I finished the script, nobody's biting yet, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep doing this because we're doing it now. So can Ron?
yeah.
I put in the private chat the Vimeo link to my trailer for the
I
dim.
saw that, and I'm going to encourage
I
my
just
brother to
shared
get
it.
on there, and because I know he's on his computer right now.
Mhm.
They're popping some awesome like reality show titles at us inside IHS.
Yeah.
But Nick, if you're on there, if you could join us
Oh,
behind the
shoot.
scenes in the studio and help us out, because that trailer, I'm on an iPad right now.
Oh,
Give me
it's
just
the whole
a second.
chat thing. I'm just now seeing that. Wow.
Yeah. So, and then Fabian said 60 days in tribal jail. You know, and to me, these are not bad ideas here, everybody.
Mm-mm.
Okay. What I look at in the communication era, what I look at specifically is that look at Patrick brings up on there too. Like, did you find the link, Nikki? Because Nikki can see in the back in the private chat there. But here's what I'm saying. We could really, really make something amazing.
Hold on.
With
Can you see my screen?
it's
Yes.
really it's mirroring itself,
All right.
bro.
Right.
I mean,
Okay. As long as you see it, do you see this?
Correct. Yes,
Can
I
you
can see that.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. All right, here you go. Here's the trailer for the dim.
Is there volume?
Now, is it going to give us volume? Let's hope so.
Well, let me press play and I'll find out.
Yeah. Now, folks, if you're not aware, this is one of Ginew Bennett's projects here. It's titled The Dim. As you can see, the trailer is available on Vimeo. If we have technical difficulties where we cannot hear this, we want to encourage all of you to get on there and take a look.
I had it playing.
And it's also on my Facebook.
Now,
yeah, could y'all hear the sound? I had it playing.
I couldn't.
Because here,
yeah. Oh, there we go. Three Fires Film Productions.
Yep. And I'm proud to say that's legit now. Registered.
Y'all ready?
Hey, Nicolette, do you want to give it a try and see if Nicky can play it from his end, Patrick? Is that a possibility? Or
I'm guaranteeing you Nicky's doing exactly what I'm doing and sharing the screen.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Is there a settings
I'm out of the
thing?
loop here.
Are y'all getting sound?
Entrepreneurial enterprisers in film and television, if you are a young person and you're looking to get into the industry, there are a lot of schools around the continent that actually encourage young Native people to be able to start in their film career or their television career. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, make sure and check it out online. You can do a Google search, Bing, Yahoo, MSN if you want. Even Mozilla Firefox is still out there doing their thing. Native parents, I encourage you to make sure that your kids have an understanding about film and television all the way around, because as we are seeing in this 21st century early on, we're starting to gain a lot of steam when it comes to our story sharing. Our film and television credentials have increased significantly with shows such as Yellowstone. And there was another show that was on a while ago. Gosh, it was about a sheriff in Wyoming, in Absaroka County, as a matter of fact. Longmire's. I watched that show for a while. There were some takeaways I wasn't really sure about, especially when it comes to our ceremonies and whatnot. But anyhow, still pretty cool nonetheless, especially with Native representation. Want to take a small moment out right now to say thanks to Skoden.xyz. Patrick, I know he's really excited about it. He's gone on there and he's done a lot to actually create more traffic to the website. If you guys are Android or iOS purchasers, you guys can go on to the iStore or Google Play, and you guys can download Skoden.xyz. It is a place for natives for certain. If you have powwows you want to share, you got native recipes that you want to encourage the young people to learn how to cook that food, you know what I'm saying? You got some native comedy skits you want to share, 1491s, you want to share your favorite powwow vids from YouTube, Skoden.xyz is a place. It looks like we're still figuring it out here too, so I'm going to have to refresh. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So
yeah.
I can't. I've played it a couple times, but I can't get the sound. So, Nick, if you have another way of doing it, because it's on Venmo, I don't know if you can download the video from Venmo and be able to upload it. But it's not giving me the option to download it from Vimeo. Sorry, Vimeo. Oh. I'm trying to get people to send me money. That's sorry. Yeah.
So now tell me, is there a school that you would recommend, Ginew, for our young people to take a look at if they're interested in a career in film and television production or screenwriting, for instance?
NYU is a big one. And then also the New York Film Academy. I know a lot of people, a lot of Native people who've gone to those schools, who have been successful in their careers. I should just say that much. UCLA as well. I know them, that they're a pretty good film school. But yeah, it's been a while since I've been in college or even researched them. So, also, the best thing that you can do is create your own experience. One of the things that I learned is that it really isn't a lot of the times about your credentials. It is your experience level. So what you want to do is buy yourself an iPhone, the latest one with 4K cinematic shooting, some proper sound recording stuff, couple of lights off of Amazon. No advertisement, apologize. But in doing those little things, um, what all you have to do is create your story. That's one of the things that I actually tell kids when I do classes in colleges or in high school about my films. I tell them that I shot Mirror Man, an award-winning film, on my iPhone because I wanted to test around camera angles, um, and show kids that you don't have to have all this really insanely expensive $50,000 cameras in order to create a film. All you need to
Yeah.
do is create your story that is meaningful to you, get a couple buddies together. That's how I'm shooting this feature film right now. It's on my cell phone. I got a lot of my buddies together, people that I know, and got introduced to some actors, some established artists in New York City, just people that believe in the story. And you pick days that you have off and say, hey, when can we get together to shoot this scene, this scene, and this scene? And you slowly build your film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The editing equipment, it's all easy. You're not cutting rolls of film and needing specific talent that knows how to process all that stuff anymore. It's all digital. So you can take this, shared. What I do is I shoot on my phone, I airdrop it to my computer, I take my SD card, I put it into my computer, I put everything into one file, open up Final Cut, and I start piecing everything together as I go. So
Yeah.
if I film this day, it's all cut what I shot that day. So by the time I get to the very last scene, as soon as I cut that together, the film is done. I mean, at least the edit. You know what I mean? Then you go into all the sound, and as I go, I actually do all the Foley stuff as I go to.
Right.
So if I have science fiction elements, I go to the free sites that you sign up for
Yeah.
cinematic sound and all that stuff, and I start building the soundtrack, the sound effects. Um, I have artists that I know that have donated music that I put in, that they're like, we want to encourage your work. Is there anything that I have that will go with any project? So this one, the first person to donate was Andrew Cooper. He's a non-native guy that lives out here on Long Island. He looks like ZZ Top. He's got this long beard like this. Um, he's got this really raspy voice when he sings. You know what I mean? So he's got this very kind of country sound, and he has a song called Blind. And when I shot all the stuff with Dylan in one of his scenes, that was in one of his lines, that I'm blind. How come I didn't see this coming? That kind of stuff, right? So when I heard that, I said, I need this song, and put it right on there because it's thematic, because the setting is also rural, like farmland. So when you piece these two things together, all of a sudden you're like, I have a theme in my film. This is it. And you start building off of that and creating more and more and more, so that it all kind of matches and has this like theme going for it, so that when your story's in there, which is actually, this film is very dramatic, um, like a couple drama. You know what I mean? So in tying all those things together, you start recognizing your film as being something unique and different, and that it has its own identity. That's the biggest thing that you want as a filmmaker. You want to be able to make sure that when you watch your film, that it has its own life, that it doesn't look like something that you've already watched before. And if it does, then it has something unique about it that sets it apart. You know what I mean? Like Mirror Man.
Yeah.
That's about the boarding school era, but tossing in there the apparition and the spirit of Mirror Man, and the premise behind that, I think that people have not seen it quite like that. You know what I mean? We have boarding school stories, but this one is unique. It's set in a way that is not like, it sets it apart from the other ones. You know what I mean? Um, and there are more and more of those films being made now. There's a wonderful filmmaker by the name of Jessie Anthony. She created a film called Brother I Cry about her brother and her brother's passing due to a drug overdose. And she sent me a script that I helped her with soundboarding. So basically, I read her script, and I was able to, and soundboarding, if you have buddies that you can soundboard off of that are actually interested in story, please, that is the number one thing that you can do is recommend. I can recommend that is that you have, if you have a story, if you have a script, if you have a film, show it to people that have an opinion, not people that are going to, oh, I liked it, because they love you and they don't want to be honest. You know what I mean? Don't show it to those people. Show it to the people that are going to be like, okay, that didn't make sense. I need you to bridge this gap with that subject, because I get what you were going, but I think in your head that you created that bridge and forgot to actually put it. You want people that talk like that to you. That didn't make sense. That line was a little corny. You know, you want people that say that to you. You want people who are going to watch your film and give an actual critique. And, you know, if your best friends are your best friends, though, Steve Ferreira, who sings with Iron River, he watched every single iteration of Looking Glass that I had. And I thank him publicly, and I thanked him on social media. I said, he's such a good friend, because every time that I had a new edit, I sent it his way, and he watched it and said whether or not, you know, he said his genuine opinion. So yeah, so get.
We have your trailer all queued up when you're ready.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So, who is he?
I told you, I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm so blind. Go get banged out.
You okay? You've been awfully quiet today.
I just keep hoping that he could change.
Come on, Troy. The suspense is playing.
Are you sure about this? Yeah. Who are you? Take your feet.
Yeah.
So as you can see, it's just a teaser. So you don't actually get that there's a science fiction element to it yet. So what I wanted to show was that there's drama to this first. So in developing this story, I wanted to. So in science fiction, the best science fiction is the science fiction that's rooted in reality. That, like Terminator 2, where it has a very realistic feel, very realistic setting, and then you drop in this thing that is very unusual, you know. So if you can see that, how I wanted to write this was a drama between these two lovers, right? And that's, like you see, that's Andrew Cooper's song "Blind," and you can see how like it is very poetic and very beautiful, right? His voice is very his voice is very raspy. He just plays with a single guitar, and it sounds the way the film looks, and it sounds the way the dynamic of the characters are. So I just wanted to show that there's a love triangle, that there's a male and a female, and that there's possibly another love interest, and that there's some dramatic stuff that happens in the mix. but you don't know quite yet what it is, and leaving it a mystery, right? So as soon as, and the reason why that is because I have to have this screening at Southampton Cultural Center, and they needed some promotional material, so I made this teaser trailer. But as soon as our production, our special effects company out of LA, Mod VFX, when they create the interdimensional object, I am going to show what that is, and then start introducing the science fiction elements on top of the drama, so that when people have this feeling of this reality, this real tangible world, they will see this suddenly this thing that doesn't fit, and it doesn't match the rest of the film. You know what I mean? And it'll seem mysterious and out of place, and what that does to the human spirit, what that object does to the downfall of this man. You know what I mean? Leads him down the rabbit hole, you know, of his own self and his own demise.
Yeah. And that's the best part about a story, is the buildup, the tension that comes from that character. I mean, like you said, when you're traveling down the rabbit hole, I mean, I always relate that saying directly to the Matrix for whatever reason, because it's like one of the main, like one of the lines of the film even says that you kind of feel like Alice traveling down the rabbit hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is so true. And then especially when it comes to a good story, I always talk about the movie Crash. I think we discussed this before, right, Patrick? There's so many different parts of the story. One over here, one over here, one over here, one over here. And at the end of it is when you finally realize how all of those stories intertwine. That's something that makes any good film a great film. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if everybody feels that way.
So the technique of Crash, Crash was very episodic, and taking all of these story elements of different stories and weaving them all together so that they all had something to do with each other. They crashed together at the end, right? So if you can think of writing and storytelling, so if you have two characters in a film, imagine taking those two characters but doing what Crash did, taking all the elements of their life and building their story so that at the end you kind of go, that's how it all relates to each other. You know what I mean? So I think one of my favorite techniques that I see in film, and people love this, is the build up and the payoff, right? So you'll have something dropped in the beginning, and I try to think about this. And talking about Jessie Anthony, her newest film that she's writing is called The Caretaker. And in doing so, one of the suggestions that I said is that you have to make your buildups a little more obvious in the beginning, because not too obvious, because I know that when you watch films, you kind of go, that's going to come up later. They're showing that for some reason, because there's nothing in good movies. There's no filler. There's always, if something's in a film, it's well thought out, and if you mention it in the first act, it'll come up later in the second act or in the third act. You know what I mean? And you'll know why that thing was there. And it's about the world building. It's about those characters. It's about again, like I said, the reasonings behind. It's taking an idea, something as simple as the pen, and saying, if I brought up this pen, maybe it's a device that I bring up later on, but this pen has a really beautiful backstory, and that it was given to me by somebody that I met at a conference somewhere, like a native conference. And that memory brought up something. So it's the math behind building all of those things, so that later on, you can remind the audience of something that had happened. You know what I mean? And there's very particular things in The Dim that are very native related, that come up in the end that you don't realize, but it's about her character and how she prays and what effect that has in the outcome of the film. You know what I mean? So it's not just the simple fact of her being Indian and her praying. It has so you bring it up right in the beginning, but it defines her and makes her different than him because she's raised traditionally, he is not. So when she prays and she smudges and she does all this stuff, it comes up later in the film, and I deliberately wrote it so that I don't want to give away the plot, so that it directly affects the outcome of the film. You know what I mean? Yes.
I got like a Sixth Sense feeling from your film, like like something maybe in the future films. In the Sixth Sense, they never use the color red except at certain points, like things that are the most important things that touched on it. They would use red, like on the doorknob. Everything else was kind of gray and black and white, but just certain things were red. I got that sense of like that Sixth Sense, just that little small teaser, of course, like a sense, like a Sixth Sense feeling.
Yeah.
Man.
So it's deliberately putting things and dotting them. It's the breadcrumbs that lead you to the end,
right.
You know.
And that's one of the best parts about a film. Like you brought up the Sixth Sense, Patrick. When I found out that the mother was spiking her soup, it pissed me off so bad. I was like, bro, this is just a movie. You let me through there. Trust me. I'm choking you out. I was so mad. You know what I'm saying? But that's the great thing about a filmmaking that I would imagine is fun for you, especially in developing these characters or different parts of the story that, all of a sudden you're pulling them in a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like another Bruce Willis movie. What was that? Where Samuel L. Jackson played Mr. Glass. What the heck was the name of that movie? Anyway, I'm bad with names tonight.
Unbreakable.
Thank you. Yes, and that spawned out into a couple of other stories that became movies of their own as well. But just to see these little pieces of the story of this character develop, you know what I'm saying? That to me is what makes great storytelling, and I think our people do that quite well. I mean, I'm seeing where your characters have those little nuances to them, whether they're traditional or non-traditional, whether they might speak their language or not. I mean, a story that I was thinking about a long time ago is a revenge story, because you know how natives be feeling after the situation with ICE. Mexicanos are natives as far as I'm concerned. That's how I've always been taught and feeling and raised to understand. That's our Southern relations. But then there's stories you hear about Reno where this KKK man and woman go after a couple down there, and they ended up getting really beat up bad and whatever. But this guy kind of goes out. He's a veteran. He goes out and exacts vengeance on all of these people in the community. One guy is a chomo, so he goes out and he's basically taking out the garbage. Yeah. But he can't handle it anymore. He's got this idea where he's just like, I can't deal with this anymore from anybody. And he started to hear his grandfather's voice in their language. He's also a professor at the university, so he speaks his language. He's having flashbacks from the war, and at the same time as all of this is happening, he's just like, okay, something's got to give. And finally but every single day as he's walking home from the school back to his house, he sees this horse sitting on the side of the path that he walks on in a pasture, and he goes up and he feeds him sugar cubes or apple slices. And he's like, one of these days, brother, I'm going to get you out of here. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and that you can feel the story, and all of a sudden he gets home, and knowing his wife had died from a DUI accident or something like that, some guy had killed her. He grabs her lipstick, and there's this crescendo and the news, and he snaps. Yeah. He goes and he grabs his wife's lipstick and he rolls it all the way out and he squishes it in his hand and he goes like this. And there's this intense moment, of anxiety and all of it, and the strings of the orchestra and this language and all these things that are surfacing from the war all crescendo together. And then it just gets quiet. Next thing you know, you see him walking down the road like that, and he walks up on that horse. Hey, brother, you ready to go? And then after that, the story begins of he's going to handle his business. But, and that to me, that's the way we should be telling stories as far as I'm concerned, because I always want to see it. It's Michael Douglas in the movie Falling Down. You remember that movie, right? Did y'all watch Falling Down, Patrick?
Yeah, I seen Falling Down.
I'll have to check
That
that one
story.
out too.
Isn't falling down the guy that snaps?
Yeah, in the middle of Los Angeles.
It's just a guy that
traffic.
crap just goes overboard and he snaps and kind of takes the revenge out on the entire city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, gangsters and everybody, restaurants who were falsely advertising and whatever else.
Yeah.
He just had enough. He works for a missile defense contractor down there in LA or whatever.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I mean, how many stories do you think you've developed in the time that you've been working on stories like this?
Oh, I have a folder here. Every time, it's a good thing and a good habit to do, where I have a folder on my computer that every time I think of something that may be unique, I jot down the title, working title, and I think about it, and I leave it there. Man, I don't want to give any away because they tend to be really good, and when thinking about the stories, it's such a, scrubbing through that world in your head constantly, and then going to another film and scrubbing through that world constantly, because it's like a game of plinko where it's just a guiding thing of what feels right. You know what I mean? I tend to like to write the gist of the story before I even start going on paper, because I hate rewriting until I have a clear-cut story. So I have 3 feature-length scripts, the short ones that I've done, and a lot of the short ones I've written in one night, because basically you have the entire thing and you just sit there and you go over everything that you visualized and seen, and you develop that with like you fill it in with the dialogue and things like that, and you leave it open sometimes, especially when you have actors that when you cast people, the story ends up changing as well, and you let them do what it is that they need to do and their understanding of it. Sometimes you do leave what's in the script, and sometimes you let them just say what it is that they think that the character would say in the moment. As long as you tell them, yeah, you can say whatever you want. Just remember that this is the goal, and we have to make it there. You know what I mean? In the dialogue. You know what I mean?
So basic.
Yeah. So I have a folder full of different script ideas. You know what I mean? They have a final draft. Final draft is the program that I use for writing. They have a final draft document with the title and some blurb and gist of what the story is. And then I'll go ahead and just think about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just go and go and go until I have a complete story in my head, and then I'll start writing it and jotting it all down. And then doing the math, like I said, and arranging the scenes, remembering the symbolisms and the imagery that I want to depict, and working in to the story. What is it about these characters that will lead me to that place? So it's like, if I have an end goal, what are all the things and that you can backtrack to the point you are in the beginning? What are all the things, it's like going forward and going backwards just to get 2 points to meet correctly. It's not difficult, but it's something that it involves tediousness and your love and passion to do it. Otherwise, it's going to get frustrating. You know what I mean? Like it needs your motivation. And what is that called? Persistence, your own internal persistence.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll sit at your canvas, just like a painter, and just stare at it. You know what I mean? And nothing will happen. But that's part of the process. You know what I mean? Sometimes you'll paint a whole bunch all at once. Sometimes you'll make a stroke stop mid-stroke and you'll realize that this isn't quite right. You'll take the brush off the canvas and sit there until you get it. You know what I mean? And it's about feeling it out and making sure that it fits to what you think that somebody else would be able to get out of it. And how it relates to that world and touches. So again, as the example, Looking Glass, when I first released that on Amazon, I did get a lot of emails from people that said, I don't know what it is, but this film helped me, and it helped me to understand. And I think that solidified my my passion to want to be a filmmaker again. Going back to your question way in the beginning, not only was I brought up as a native performer and a singer and a teacher, but when it was a woman, when she wrote me an email and said that this helped me understand some stuff that I was going through, and I couldn't understand why, but it helped me. It had helped calm me, and I said, this is my art. This is what I want to do. This is how it is that I want to reach to people. And this is what's satisfying about that. You know, I love dancing. I love teaching children, but there's no better satisfaction than creating a film with all of these different cogs and moving parts and gears and having someone look at it and say, I get it. And I enjoyed that for whatever reason that they have. You know, it's like anybody looking
Absolutely.
at the Mona Lisa and saying, I have no idea why that's affecting me, but it does, and I appreciate it. You know what I mean?
I love the way you describe that, because, you know, I'm in my own process. I've been in this process for over 5 years now, and watching your process and listening how you describe that. And I was told something a little different when doing this, because I had a hard time writing it.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not going to tell my story because I'm really protective of the story I'm working on. I've been working on it for a while, and it has to do with a lot of my personal life in the military and as being Native in the military, so on. So, but anyway, they said, don't worry about trying to get anybody to get anything out of it. Just tell a story. Just tell your story. Don't worry about who you're going to affect. Don't worry about who you want to touch. Don't worry about any of that. All I want you to do, because this is what this other guy like you has been in a lot longer than I have, and I've not been in anything. I'm an outsider looking in, just trying to tell a story. He said, listen, because I was at that beginning, and I was like, I didn't want to write it because, like you were saying, I was trying, oh, well, this would affect some person, and I want this to affect this people, and I want it. But he was like, I don't care who you want to affect. Just tell the story. If the story is told the way you come from your heart, if it's told the right way, it affects a ton of people. But you can't think about who you're trying to affect. It's just tell the story. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm just telling the story.
So let me correct myself, because I think you interpreted that wrong. So I didn't say it quite right. I'm not a filmmaker to affect people. I'm a filmmaker because that is my canvas. That is me pouring myself out. And I think I'm a firm believer that art is therapy. Whatever your art is therapy, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
If you're pouring all of you onto something and it helps you, having it affect somebody else is icing on the cake. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's this weird feeling of having somebody understand you. You know what I mean? And I think that in my whole life, I've been kind of awkward and weird and a loner and artist. And, you know, I think in situations, even though I've learned to be a speaker, I do feel awkward, and I feel like people are awkward around me. Like they don't know what to get from me yet, because I'm, you know, a lot of times hyper analyzing things and, you know, have that mindset where I'm constantly somewhere in my head. You know what I mean? But I think that's what makes me a good songwriter and, you know, creativity, because I'm constantly going. I'm finding it as I get older that I'm finding it harder to sleep because I'm always thinking about things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Brain's always going.
Always going.
That's the way it is, man. You'd be sitting there before, like I was talking about this before. You'd be sitting in your hotel room before the, first grand entry of powwow, thinking about all the moves you're taking out of the way you dance and all the things you're going to bring that's fresh and new. And you're just like, you can't put it down, man. I'd be up to like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, like, go to sleep, bro. Like that, you know what I'm saying? Like really just trying to get that. But yeah, and that's it. You're developing your craft.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when I watched the trailer, the preview,
Mm-hmm.
Three Fires Film Productions. Like, I mean, that's just one little piece. But then you see that, like, oh, that looks so good. Or it's like adding credits at the end of a project you put together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I work with Black Magic Design, DaVinci Resolve 18. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I was saying, that's industry standard stuff. And
Yeah.
I was talking to Patrick about that earlier. Like, and people, it's very, very, it takes a lot of data on your computer and speed for that computer to work correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you're in your groove and all of a sudden everything, your fades and, graphics and opening titles and credits and all of these things like that, the way that the sound is, it's like, I tell it to people like this. Remember Independence Day, the original Independence Day? When that movie came out in theaters, man, they're in Montana, bro. We were on powwow circuit in Montana. Where were we? I think Great Falls or one of the smaller towns anyway. There was a line all the way around the block just for people to get into that theater to see that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that it opens up.
Mm-hmm.
You just hear these sounds, and all of a sudden, there it is. Your heart's racing a little bit more. I totally understand what you're saying about that because it does. It just Have you seen the outtakes of Star Wars before they added James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader?
Yeah.
I mean, or the soundtrack. You know what I mean? Because these are people that are amazing in their field. But before you add those little pieces in there,
it's not the same film.
Average potatoes, bro.
Yeah. It's nothing without the bacon bits and the chives and the sour cream. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And
that's the thing that I can see with you as a filmmaker. Is just one of many creative geniuses out in Indian country. I can see where that love comes from, and I can see what you mean by it's really hard to sleep because it is. And I can say this. I don't know if it's just me. I think that would be my mindset for the longest time. Am I the only one dealing with this? And then hearing you say that, it's refreshing. And I think Patrick, you deal with that too, right? Especially when it comes to like performances out there in the community, things. I mean, he was showing me a song the other day, bro, that he was working on. I was just like, I get it, Patrick. I actually want to produce for him because I'm like, dude, you need this. You need to let me like make music for you. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's this constant hamster wheel.
I
nonstop.
I have severe PTSD, from my time in the military, and I deal with a lot of hurt and pain. And how you say it's a canvas for you. For me, it's, you said it earlier that identified perfect with me. It's therapy for me. That is what it is for me. I deal with so much, and I'm still taking tons of medications to help me deal with it. And so yeah, anything I do is literally like therapy. It has to be therapy because I'll fall apart. I'm the first one to tell you I'm quick to fall apart. The strength that I have isn't as strong as I'd like it to be. So I have a habit of falling apart. So like the movie idea was Emily's idea for my therapy. She goes, you know what? Let's write it down. Write it down. So I have a notebook next to my bed, and I'll get up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. and start writing on it and start just adding to it at 2 a.m. in the morning. Or if I'm super crazy angry, because my medication's not working right and my emotions are all over the place, I'll start writing. Start writing, or I'll pull out my flute and I'll start writing new music with my flute and my back and start working on my backing tracks. So when I love the way you were talking about how it is a canvas of your painting, because that's passion. That's all passion coming out of you. That's part of you leaving it on the page.
And number one, it has to be honest.
Yeah.
And that makes the best art is when you're honest, because people can sniff out bullshit. You watch movies.
Oh,
and
in a second, bro.
any movie we watch, and there's
Especially
the slightest hint of any BS, you pinpoint it and it turns you off. You know what I mean? Like, especially if it's like a writer that has not probably had experience in a particular subject, and they're just throwing it in there because they think that the audience will like it, but that it's not written from experience. So I'm sure, Patrick, if you've written something down based off of your PTSD experience, and there will be every indication to anybody who's ever suffered from that, that it's an honest reaction, that it comes from an honest place, that I'm sure that the build-up to show that is in there as well. You know what I mean? People will see it and they will get it. You know what I mean?
I think, especially being Native, a lot of us suffer with PTSD, not just military. When people think of PTSD, a lot of time it's associated with military and what we've done, but there's so much stuff that goes on in our communities that give us PTSD that we suffer from. So, my story is basically just a little something. It's basically about a Native guy coming off the res, going into the military, and going through all this hell and turmoil and coming back to his people unhealed. And he doesn't know what to do. He's adopted this military mindset of this pain and this anguish. And now he's coming back to his people where he's dealing with a different type of pain and anguish. And he's trying to find that middle ground, a sanity. Where do I fit in this world now? I don't feel quite Native anymore. I don't feel like I'm not in the military anymore. I'm dealing with these nightmares, these pains, and I just don't know where I go. And it's sort of like that internal struggle of this veteran dealing with just all hell and not knowing which way to go. And as Native people know, it can go really dark really fast.
Yeah.
At any moment he could commit suicide. At any moment he could turn another leaf and go spiritual or go traditional. Mm-hmm. So it's that leaving the crowd to wonder what direction this guy's going to go. Look at all the hell. And then you also, no matter what direction he goes, a part of you understands that direction. If he decides to take his own life, you're like, I hate that he took his own life, but I kind of understand the pain he went through and why he took his own life. And then, but if he decides to go traditional, you're like, oh man, I'm so happy he went this way, because he's realized that the traditional way is the way he needs to go. You just don't know either way. And it's sort of and that's just a little bit of what will be that's in my story. Because for me, I know what it is to look down the barrel of a gun and want to take that and eat that bullet. Mm-hmm. I know what it is to deal with alcoholism and mix that with medication from the military, mm-hmm. and have the military Christians tell you one thing and then your tribal elders tell you another. Yeah. And trying to find out what path to walk down. It's a story I've been working on for a while, and it's one of those stories. Even if I spoke about it much, I'd break down here on screen because I'm getting choked up just because I know the pain that these people go through.
Yeah. That's the most integral part of any good story, is the human element. When I feel, that's why I brought up Crash earlier, because I say this right now as a matter of course. And I brought up this before with other people that have watched this movie and said, when that little girl goes running out the door to protect her dad with an invisible cloak that he put on her just so she would go to sleep easier and be more at peace in her room. Soon as she runs out there and that man pulls out that pistol and bow, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. I was furious. I was crying. I'm like, no. And it's funny because, as a matter of fact, the movie Menace to Society, another gangster movie of the 90s, mm-hmm. the way that they talked about that film being made, what the director had said and the producers all said the same thing. He's like, we played that movie in select locations throughout the whole country. As a matter of fact, we played it in some other locations around the world. He said, and actual gangsters were in the theater like, no, man, that ain't right. No, man. Oh, now you want to go? And so unurged. To me, that's what real storytelling is all about, because it takes you and it just rips you right out of your seat. You're like, oh, son, oh my God, did that just happen? You know, that's what I love. That's why when I see actors and actresses that you're like, damn, dude, was it an act? That didn't seem like an act. And it brought me to thinking about that story I watched recently about Steven Spielberg, when, you know, because he had to take like days off away from that project. You know, he couldn't do it, like, ideally speaking, because this is something that involved his people. I mean, our native people, obviously we know about genocide, but the Holocaust of Jews is very important, integral part of their history as well. But he said it was so hard for me just to be in that, and the way that he would draw emotions out of actors and actresses in this film. He said it was so hard for me knowing that this really happened.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like, I'm not sure if you get that same feeling that I get, but I'm like, damn, son. But yes, I'm interested in hearing what Patrick's story is all about too. You know what I mean? Like, one of these days, bro, I'm gonna pick your mind. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I'm not pressuring.
Oh, it's
going
gonna.
to know.
It's coming. It's coming to fruition. I got Ginew over there. It's going to be coming in, and I'll be pitching him the story when he comes to visit me. I now have a writer, an Indigenous writer, that's putting this to paper for me. I've already done the treatment on it 7 times. I've rewritten the treatment 7 times now, and I think I got the treatment where I want it. And I've even started somewhat, what do you call it? Picture boarding it. What's it called? Picture boarding. Storyboarding. And I am learning from a guy that does not have any education in any of this stuff. I didn't go to school for any of it. So I'm literally playing it from ear, like, okay, I hope this works. If this doesn't work, you know, but I'm just trying to tell a story that, I don't know. I think the Native veteran story is something that's never been told in the way that I go through it in a modern Native veteran that lives in 2 worlds.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's basically just, I know what it was like to be a Native in the military and not have someone to go to pray. Like, you're a Christian, you can go to the priest, you can go to the rabbi if you're Jewish, if you can go to all these people. But when you're Native, you're alone and you're looked at as a weirdo. I think the greatest, my second tour in Iraq, the National Guard from New Mexico was there. And I never felt more like I had family. I did at that point, because we actually did ceremonial songs. We met up in an empty tent and did ceremony songs when everybody else was doing their thing. So we were like, hey, let's go over here and sing a little bit. And the guy would bring his drum and we'd sit there and sing. And we had our first ever powwow in Iraq in 2003. So, you know, it was a magical thing. So facing these, it's sort of my story, you know, I want to get on with the show, but, you know, it'll come to fruition. I'm praying on it and it's working on it. So it'll come to fruition when Creator sees it's time for it to come out. It'll come.
I should let you know that sounds great, though.
I want to know your biggest influences, Ginew. I mean, you know, we know that powwows have that influence on us. We know that our Native experiences, but I want to know, like, what was some of the most pivotal moments for you when it comes to this type
80s and 90s movies. Aliens is always going to be my favorite, and Terminator 2, and they're both James Cameron films.
James Cameron, yeah. We've had conversations about James Cameron, huh, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, not so much, you know, what's going on now, but, you know, I think every artist reaches their peak, and I think that, you know, some stuff should be
not said.
Some things
you keep to yourself.
Even like Ridley Scott, you know, doing the Prometheus series now and trying to rewrite his own film, you know, it didn't quite work out, you know, the way that
it was okay for what it was.
Yeah,
I enjoyed
Alex Jones up in arms cussing around on his show.
Yeah,
this is what you did. I'm like,
yeah, but you can see, you know, at a certain point, you know, it starts turning into these big philosophical things that I guess if you're that level of artist, you can just go ahead and do whatever you want, and you know, it's part of that process. And I think going back to earlier what Patrick said, I think that you hit the nail on the head about why it is that we see so much torture porn in Native films is because I don't think that we have we finished healing as a people.
No,
So
you're
in
absolutely
in
right.
talking about art as therapy, I think there's going to be a lot of films that are going to be deep and heavy and dark for a while, for many generations, because you can see how many generations that we've had to suffer through things. You know,
It's a good point.
And-
It's a very good point.
you know,
Well-
I mean, even your film, you know, there is that element in it.
Oh, it's dark. My film is definitely it's dark, and
Yeah.
it's going to hit on. I don't think I hit on. I touch on some of in my film. I touch on some of the Native aspects of what we go through on the res.
Yeah.
But you know, I think mostly my film is internal struggle with trying to walk in two worlds and not knowing how to find that balance of walking in two worlds.
See now, like again, going back to stereotypes, that is a cliche, but it's a cliche in a form that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Which is a modern Native soldier. You know, we've seen Flags of Our Fathers with Adam Beach.
Adam Beach, yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think that story
Or
can
Wind
touch upon
Talkers or
yours.
any of the
Yeah,
others.
No.
yeah. I don't think that story holds a candle to what is potentially your modern day story that will resonate with even non-native people, because it's going to be an honest story.
Here you have the people that always stereotype it was a native burial ground, and there was this massive haunting and possession stories, and you know, like my favorite zombie movies is actually like undead story.
Yeah.
Evil Dead. The Evil Dead series scared the living shit out of me as a kid.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Ash becoming, you know, because this went from horror genre to horror comedy,
Yeah.
horrorcore comedy, and like
Yeah, that first
you
one
just
was
you
rough.
relate to this dude because he's like, holy shit, he's reading the Necronomicon. He's like, they're trying not to read that. I mean, just when you're a little kid and you're watching this, you know what I mean? Ace of Spades, Jack of Diamonds, Nine
It's
of
a lot.
Clubs. You're like, whoa, what is she doing? All of a sudden she's like, ah, and he's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
From that moment, you know what I mean? Because it did, like I said, I was scared. I was 7 when that first movie came out, the original Evil Dead. Then that went to Evil Dead 2, and then of course the Army of Darkness, which is like scary, but it's still awesome and it's funny in its own way. And I kind of grew up through that genre. I was actually Freddy Krueger 2 years in a row. I mean, it's a scary movie, yes, but he was a child murderer. Like, what in the hell? You know what I mean? What was going through my conscious or subconscious at that time when I'm wanting to be a child murderer for Halloween?
I'm gonna cut you a little short there, Ron. With 8:59, and I want to ask gonna one more question before we get out of here, man. I want to know what you got going on. Where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you if they're interested in being your films, or if they have any of that stuff going on? And what you got going on in the future, and where can we find a way to support you in every way that you do? We want to know a way we can support you.
Pardon me. I am still up and coming, even though that I'm becoming well known on the not only native film but film circuit. You know, I've had people who just started following me lately. There was Gene Brave Rock and then Michael Gray Eyes. Those were 2 surprises. You know, so I'm like, where the hell have these guys seen me and heard about me? Like, I must be doing something right. You know what I mean? For some random, you know, people to you know, follow you. You know what I mean? So I think those are good signs for myself and my own, you know, validations. You know what I mean? But Looking Glass is on Amazon. I'm still doing short films. I'm working on this feature now, and just looking out for the the times and the dates. So for example, like when I have the Southampton Cultural Center viewing of the DIM, buy some tickets, even if you don't attend. Make your way out here if you want to come check it out. You know what I mean? I'll do another one at LTV at the studio that I work at. I'll try to find a venue in the city, and then I'll start, sending it to film festivals. And then if there's a film festival like the Philip K. Dick Film Festival that honored us with an award, a cultural award in science fiction, go to that one in the city. I'll be posting all that, and just come around. Great support, Patrick. Posting that I saw Looking Glass. It's my bro. That all that stuff helps. All that kind of stuff helps. And just like the podcast, we help each other. You promote me, and then I promote you, and it's about keeping us all upheld in the same spot. You know what I mean? And I think that's one kind of pet peeve that I have in native Hollywood, that it's turning into actual Hollywood, and there is resentment and a lack of wanting to. There's not a healthy wanting to collaborate with everybody. You know what I mean? And there's starting to become like this gatekeeping, and it's frustrating to me because I think that's really not Indian of us to do. And there are some really good native film festival directors that really will search out really great ideas that are out of the norm. And I thank those ones because I've been in those film festivals. They try to look for what's different, even if it may not be the greatest quality, but if there's potential, I think that's where we will win. Finding things that are new, because not every Indian has the resources to be able to create something, but they've gone through the process of trying to create something new and different, and that speaks on their view of the world. You know what I mean? So in being able to have those, we should always try to support each other, and not just in the realm of like, we can have native stars. We do have people like favorite drum groups, favorite dancers, and all that stuff. And we should have favorite filmmakers and things like that. But like the powwow, we're always there anyway. Like film festivals are like powwows. Where we all get together, we show our stuff. But we should have a good time, and we should be able to not be afraid to put ourselves in there, because that they should be spaces that we're not judged, and that we're creating art, just like powwows, ceremonies. We may not be able to sing, we may not be able to dance as well as somebody else, but it should be a safe environment that we don't have that judgment. And that's how native film should be.
We need to stop with the colonialized mindset. I mean, that's why I called you a ladder. My phrase, I ticketed my grandfather as calling people ladder Indians. He said, become a ladder Indian. Mm-hmm. So what do you mean? It's a ladder Indian will bend over and let another native climb on his back to get higher. Mm-hmm. He'll pick the fruit and bring it down. So if you build a platform, and I'm able to build off what you build and build a little extra, and the next person will come up and climb on you, and he'll climb on me, and they'll build a platform for the next guy. Next thing you know, we're reaching the heavens, because we've been ladders and we just brought each other up. Instead, we become this crabs in a bucket, where if one native is doing really good, we're going to go out of our way to pull them back down in the bucket, because we don't want them to get too far away.
That's right. And folks, we really appreciate all of you tuning in tonight right here on the B&B Indigenous Podcast for our new time and our new day, Monday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're about to be moving in here in the next month of the daylight savings time. So you know what? We're all going to lose an hour of sleep, and that's okay. I know we all appreciate the warmer weather. We hope you guys are having a wonderful time in your community tonight. For all of you still out there traveling on the road back from Florida's Seminole Tribal Fair and Powwow, or Lincoln's birthday celebration out there on the north end of the Warm Springs Reservation, I want to say, make sure you guys be careful. If you're staying and enjoying breakfast with Cutla tomorrow, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, get it done. We really appreciate our sponsors. Yet again, Skoden.xyz, a place for natives. Want to say special thanks to our guest tonight, Ginew, Benton. If you guys are interested in seeing his films, you can definitely check him out. That's right. I'm going to see him at the awards show, at the Oscars, wearing his whole entire regalia like that. Really just saying, yeah, putting it down like that in a good way. We really appreciate all of the artists that have joined us, especially Ginew, bringing new stories, new ideas. I think he's making some waves, and I know we're going to be encouraging him, hoping we're going to be seeing more in the near future. If you guys like the B&B Indigenous podcast, or you love it, or you really, really, really love it, we want you to like, share, subscribe to this page. That's right.
Share,
like, and subscribe. We're going to get Ginew to sign up for a Skoden.xyz, membership too. And everybody in his family, you know what? I'm going to come over and I'm going to cook fry bread at your house. That's what I'm going to do. If you guys sign up for a Skoden.xyz account on your phone, you guys, because most people don't sit at a laptop anymore, most days, unless they're at work. That's right. Skoden.xyz is a place to meet up with all sorts of natives out there. Whether you're a filmmaker, a story writer, you're a potterer, you're a painter like myself, or you guys do, skits and comedy and whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? Or your uncle is Don Burnstick, you know what I'm saying? Or you guys happen to like APTN or whatever it is out there in native country. We wanted to encourage you right here for the B&B Indigenous Podcast. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. Next week is going to be an excellent show as well. Special shout out to my brother Patrick Little Wolf Brooks. Ginew Bennett, thank you for being with us tonight, man. And we hope you guys enjoy the hell out of this show. That's right. Wonderful. We'll see you guys again next time. And like that in a good way.
Oh ho!
All right, guys. Have a good